What's going on? Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be going over frequently asked questions on the WRX with a CVT transmission. Now, these are in no particular order, and they're not going to be very in-depth discussions. I have standalone videos on some of these that will more deeply go into the information that I'm going to cover. This is just meant to kind of get your feet wet and give you some working knowledge so you can do a little bit more research. So this video is going to be suited for those of you who may be thinking about getting this car or may have just gotten the car and want to know more information about it. So in the video description and the cards up above, I'll link to other parts in this video series for those of you who are interested in more information. So without further ado, let's get started. Another question that I get asked very frequently is, do I need an Accessport to tune a car? And the answer to that is absolutely not. You don't. There are many different ways to tune your car. You have Accessport, you have Ecutech, e-tuning, which can use either the Accessport or Ecutech, or it can use open source, which is another option that you have, which involves basically you doing your own tuning, you tuning your own car, or getting a tune from someone else with your own laptop or computer with a cable. You have your standard dyno tune, and they can use open source tuning, or they can use your Accessport or your Ecutech or whatever the case might be to tune your car. There's also the option to do an e-tune, which is going to be done remotely. So what happens is that you will be provided to put in your Accessport or whatever device you have that they support. You'll be provided with a base map, and you're going to go and do some pulls and do data logging on your Accessport, and then you're going to send them back that information, and they're going to review it, and they're going to do revisions to your map, and they're going to send it back to you, and you're going to do that as many times as it takes in order to get the tune right. And then you'll consider tune when the tune is safe and reliable and gives you whatever power you had in mind. So as you can see, there's many different ways to tune your car. I will say this about the Accessport. Accessport is probably the easiest way of doing it. You can literally go and buy an Accessport, go to the parking lot, and in 4 or 5 minutes flat install stage 1 off-the-shelf map. In the future, you can get stage 2 and use the stage 2 off-the-shelf map that's in there. There are tuners that have their own off-the-shelf maps that you can buy from them that use the same parts of the corresponding Cobb stage. So if, say, you don't like the stage 2 off-the-shelf map that Cobb offers with the Accessport, then you can go to a tuner that offers a stage 2 map that they developed. And it's not the best solution, but it's usually the cheapest. Those who use Ecutech will swear by it. I can't speak to Ecutech because I've never used it myself, but I've heard great things about it, and I have no reason to believe that that's not true. I'm sure it is great. It does require a little bit more know-how. It is not as widely supported as the Accessport is, so it's a chance that you got to take. But if you're willing to do the research on it, I think it could be very rewarding from what I've seen so far. And of course, if you want the most hands-off approach and the best product, then there's always the option of taking your car to a tuner who can put the car on a dyno. You don't have to know anything. You can just go and get the car tuned and drink a latte while they're tuning your car, and you'll have a final product right then and there. There's a lot of different ways to tune your car, so don't think for a second that Accessport is the only way. And I understand why if you're a beginner, you might think that is because basically there's so many people who have an Accessport that it almost seems like a requirement. It is not a requirement. You don't need to have an Accessport. In fact, after you install the tune in your car, you can take the Accessport and put it in your glove box and just forget about it. But that is also another thing that I'll mention about the Accessport. It's an expensive investment at first, but it's not necessarily money that's lost. Because if you take good care of it and keep it in brand new condition, when you're done with your car, you remove your tune and you bring the Accessport, put the Accessport back in the box, and you can recoup a big chunk of the money that you paid for it initially. So it's just something to keep in mind. So the next question is very hard to answer, and that's, will the dealer know if I remove my tune if I was tuned? That is a very difficult question to answer. Our cars use a calibration identification number and a calibration verification number. Okay, these two numbers work in unison to tell Subaru which map is installed into the car and the contents of it. So it's basically the ID, right, of the software that's installed in the ECU. So if you were to take and delete all of that information out of your ECU and install your own and took your car in, Subaru would absolutely 100% be able to tell that your car was tuned, because the software would not match, and it just would not be their software. It wouldn't match. But companies like Cobb and any good tuner, what they do is they'll capture the ECU data when they install the tune. That way, if you need to go back to stock, you can reinstall this information, and this includes those numbers. So you can theoretically bring your car back to stock and there'd be no way of knowing. But there's also an ignition counter on these ECUs, and that you cannot erase. Say you have a car and the day that you get it, you install an Accessport and install a tune in the car, and you erase the CID and the CVN, and all that information is erased, and you put your own tune into the car, and you drive that car for 100,000 miles. And in that 100,000 miles, you will start your car X number of times. Whatever that number is, hundreds of times, whatever that number is, you will start your car a number of times. So if you were to remove your tune and put the stock tune back, that stock tune is going to reset that counter back to 0. So it's going to be blatantly obvious that that wasn't the original tune. I'm not an expert or an engineer for Subaru. What I've heard and what seems to be true from people going in and doing warranty claims is that you could tell them that your battery died or something to that effect, and supposedly your battery dying does the same thing as you putting that information back. I don't know if I fully buy that, but that seems to be the consensus. Now, what I can tell you is that practically speaking, the people take their car in all the time with tunes, and they don't ever get discovered. It doesn't even come into the conversation, and they have warranty claims honored, even having the car tuned. How much investigation the dealer wants to do into your claim will depend a lot on your relationship with them. It will depend a lot on their own schedule. You know, how busy are they? Are they swamped with issues and cars and things that they have to do? What is your own history? Did you buy? Are you a good customer with them? Did you buy your car with them? You know, whatever the case might be, all of these things come into play as to how much the dealer is going to investigate. It could stop right there, and they might see it and not even care and move on, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones paying for the warranty claim. Subaru of America is. So if you have a good relationship with the dealers, you might get away with a lot. If you don't, if you're rude, they might tell you right off the bat, hey, no, this car's been modified, we're not doing it, and then you have a battle on your hands. And of course, it also depends on what exactly you're trying to get done. If you need a short block, if you need a new transmission, there's a good chance that Subaru of America may request your ECU to do a more forensic analysis on it to make sure at their level that the ECU wasn't tampered with. And they may have ways of knowing that nobody knows about. So it's one of those things where it is a chance you take. I have heard both of people getting their stuff denied. I've heard of people being stage 2+ and getting a new engine or new transmission with no problems whatsoever. If you're going to be modifying your engine, those are chances that you're going to take, and you have to be willing to eat the cost if your warranty claim gets denied. But at the end of the day, if you really wanted to fight against Subaru of America, you know, they have more information than you do. That's just the bottom line. And they know, they designed the ECU, and they're the ones that know exactly how to check if it's been tampered or not. You can take all of this information with a grain of salt and try to fight them, but you know, it's probably going to be a losing battle. Now, I'm not advocating to anyone to commit fraud, but if you are ever in a situation where you have to bring in your car for any sort of warranty claim or work, if you can easily remove the tune and remove whatever parts that were associated with the tune, some might be easy to do. So if you have, say, an intake, that might be easy to take out and then, you know, install the stock tune back. If you can easily do that, then it would behoove you to do that, and it might save you a big headache down the road. Tell them that your battery died and see where that takes you. Although I wouldn't put too much stock into that. We definitely have the technology for them to easily be able to tell if the ECU was flashed, how many times. There might be no way for us to know how they know. So prepare yourself for the worst and hope for the best. All right, moving on. Another question that I get asked all the time is, how do I check the transmission fluid? Do I need to change the transmission fluid? If so, how often? There's no way for you to easily check the transmission fluid in the car. There's no dipstick to check the transmission fluid. So that's that. If you want to check, you can check if it's full by removing the 2 plugs and comparing the level that way. That's beyond the scope of this video. Subaru claims that the transmission fluid lasts the lifetime of the vehicle. Now, I would consider lifetime to be 100,000 miles, right? You and I both know that this transmission fluid is not going to last not even 100,000 miles, let alone until the transmission breaks. And if you don't change the transmission fluid, you know, it will last you until the transmission breaks. When I installed my CVT cooler at around 30,000 miles, my CVT fluid looked almost new. So maybe it's just the way that I drive my car, but other people have had a substantially darker transmission fluid at their transmission fluid change versus the new. The new transmission fluid is orange and it's see-through, and it looks like you could drink it. So you can't tell me that fluid lasts forever. You can't tell me any fluid lasts forever. I'm not gonna buy it. That said, It's going to highly depend on how you drive your car as to how often you replace this transmission fluid. So you can tell yourself that a good rule of thumb to start, you can plan on replacing the transmission fluid at around 60,000 miles, and then adjust that depending on how you drive your car. So if you drive your car very aggressively all the time, very spiritedly, then you might do better changing it at 40,000 miles or even 30,000 miles. And you have to then consider whether you're just replacing the transmission fluid or if you're flushing the entire transmission, which are two different things. Changing your transmission fluid, it's not like changing your oil. There's a little know-how that goes into it, and maybe at some point I'll do a how-to video. There's something that if you're interested in or you're coming up on it that you might want to research. I will advise, do not take your car to a quick lube place to get your transmission fluid changed. If you're going to get your transmission fluid changed professionally, get it done at a dealer or get it done by a reputable shop that knows your car and knows which fluid to put in it. Don't take it to those cheap places. You're gonna pay for it and you're gonna regret it. And the last thing I'll cover in this video is, do I need a tune with an intake? Do I need a tune with an axle back? Let me talk about the axle back first. Do I need a tune with an axle back? No, you don't need a tune with an axle back. An axle back does not change the breathing characteristics of the car. So it doesn't change the volume of air leaving your car. So because of that, it does not require a tune. So what an axle back is going to do, and if you didn't know what an axle back is, it's just the part of the exhaust from the axle back. Obviously, that's why it's called axle back. All that's going to do is going to change how the car sounds. So if you think that your car is just too low for your particular taste, then you can get an axle back that has a much smaller muffler and raise the volume of your exhaust. And you could go the other way. You can get a bigger muffler, or you can delete the muffler altogether and get a muffler delete, which will be very, very loud. But again, because you're not changing the breathing characteristics of the car, you can install an axle back without installing a tune with it. And to go with that is the intake. So there are some intakes that are designed to match the specifications of the stock intake 100%. Those particular intakes usually say no tune required because they don't change the breathing characteristics of the car. The car breathes exactly the same way with this aftermarket intake as it does with a stock intake. Not all intakes are like that. Some intakes change the characteristics or give you more air than what the stock intake system gives you. In those intakes, you absolutely need to tune your car. Most of the time, the intake is going to tell you tune required. If you start giving your car more air than what it's expecting, then you're going to start running lean, and that can create catastrophic consequences down the line. Even though you can install an intake that says tune required without a tune, and you might think that everything is fine, you might substantially reduce the lifetime of your engine by doing that and not even realize it. Most of the time at lower powers, at stage 1, an intake is not going to give you that much power increase, if any at all. A lot of the times, intakes are not for power, right? You might want an intake for sound, right? It substantially changes the sound of your intake system. You'll be able to hear your bypass valve, and you'll be able to hear the rush of air going through the tube. I can tell you that firsthand. So that might be a reason why you might want an upgraded intake, not necessarily for power, or you might just want a different look to your engine bay and get an intake that just looks better for whatever reason. Whatever your reason for getting an intake, if you get one that requires a tune, make sure that you don't run your car without a tune. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and very quickly answer a question that I get asked all the time, even though I do have several videos that talk about this. Is the kicker upgrade enough? I hear that all the time. Even my videos where I'm talking about this, I still get that question, but I'll address it here very quickly. Is the kicker upgrade enough? That's going to very highly depend on your own idea of what great sounding music sounds like. So like I've said before, the kicker upgrade is going to give you more definition, and it's going to sound better. And if you get the kicker upgrade with the sub, that's going to substantially increase the depth of the music and how good it sounds. For the price of the kicker upgrade, the 4-door speakers, the 2 tweeters, and the sub, for that price, you can have a competition level system. For half the price, you can have a system that sounds better than that. I'm talking about when you include the sub. That's the reason why I never bought the sub that came with it, and instead just bought the door speakers, the tweeters. And if you just buy the door speakers and the tweeters and don't add a sub, be it the kicker or an aftermarket sub, if you just do that, then the answer to that question is easy. It's probably not going to be enough. The reason why it's not going to be enough is because fill bass usually makes any music sound better, any system sound better, The fill bass sounds best when it's coming from a sub that's dedicated to playing those very low frequencies. Once you add that, the music sounds substantially better. The kicker upgrade might not be enough without a sub for a lot of people, because the kicker upgrade does not add those lows if you're not getting a sub. So I'm going to stop this video here because it's getting kind of long. If you made it to the end, I hope you got something out of it. If you did, be sure to give it a like to support the video and support the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, consider subscribing for more WRX and general automotive content. As always, thanks a lot for watching. I will see you next video. Take care.